One day, Peter just decides that he's going to go fishing. He's going to go back to his old life. He's going to go back to what he knew. And I don't know if it was just he was tired of seeing the upper room. He was just tired of how things were at the time. Or maybe he was kind of giving up on the dream of following Jesus. I mean, Jesus had died. He'd resurrected. He'd seen him. But what was next? And so Peter thought that life was over. He went back to the only thing he ever knew and said, guys, I'm going fishing. And many of the other disciples went with him. And they went and they fished all night. And they didn't catch a thing. Does that sound a little familiar? If you look back in Luke chapter 4 or Matthew chapter 4, when Jesus first calls his disciples, it was a long night of fishing with not a lot of fish. They catch nothing. Jesus calls from the shore. They didn't know it was Jesus. They just thought it was a guy on the beach and said, hey, have you caught anything? They have to tell him, no, we've not caught anything. And so the guy from the shore goes, throw your nets on the other side of the boat. And as soon as the nets hit the water, it seems as if the nets just fill with fish. I mean, it begins to nearly sink the boat. And John looks at Peter and says, it is the Lord. So Peter grabs his coat, he puts it on, and he jumps in the water, and he swims to shore. He races to shore because he needs to see Jesus. When he gets to shore, there's a fire burning. And John uses an interesting description. It's a fire of burning coals. If you look back at the different denial accounts of Peter denying who Jesus is, it says that he sits around a fire of coals, a charcoal fire in the temple courtyard. When someone comes up to him and says, do you know Jesus? And he says, I do not know the man. He denies him around a charcoal fire, and Jesus has a charcoal fire waiting on the shore when Peter comes back. Jesus cooks breakfast for the boys. They eat together, and then he and Peter have a conversation. See, Peter thought he was out. And Jesus asked him, do you love me? Peter said, of course I love you. Do you not know? I love you. And he says, feed my lambs. He asks him again, do you love me? He says, Lord, I love you. He says, take care of my sheep. He asks him a third time, Peter, do you love me? Peter gets kind of offended. Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. He says, feed my sheep. Now follow me. And maybe today you feel a lot like Peter. That you have some failures in your life. Some things that are going to keep you from Jesus choosing you to be one of his disciples. Those faults are going to keep him from choosing you to use you for the benefit of others in his kingdom. But remember, in spite of our failures, there's always time for a comeback. Peter is welcome back in. Peter, follow me. In just a few days, in just a few weeks from this time, from this fishing trip, Peter will stand before a multitude on Pentecost, and he will preach the first Christian sermon, and 3,000 people will come to know Christ because of his sermon, because of his speaking, because of his preaching, because of his relationship with Jesus. There's always time for a comeback. And maybe today you're feeling a bit beat down, that you're feeling a little bit like a failure. And I just want you to know, it's time for a comeback. And Jesus can use your comeback to glorify him. I love you. And know that I'm praying for you guys and can't wait to see you again real soon.